Kia ora koutou. I'm Sean Davis, an Enterprise Advisor at Venture Taranaki, and you're joining us for another Ahead of the Curve webinar brought to you by Venture Taranaki in partnership with the Regional Business Partners Network. Today we have Adam Harris, our usual facilitator, joining us to give an insight on how to adapt your business to remote working. Adam has supported us at Venture Taranaki, the Taranaki Chamber of Commerce, New Plymouth District Council, and the Institute of Directors in delivering effective webinars during Alert Level 3 and 4, and has a strong skill set in communication and remote working. Just before we dive into the webinar, I want to run through how we can make this work. So at the bottom panel there, you'll see a chat box. If you can, a little chat sign, if you click on that, you can then go to all panelists and attendees, click on that, and that's how you can communicate with both Adam and I and the attendees. So if you just want to write your name in there and where you're from, that would be fantastic. And then also to ask any questions, please use the Q&A box. So if you click on that little Q&A box, write your question in there, and then after the presentation, Adam and I can go through those. Cheers, Adam, over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Sean, and good morning, everybody. Just going to put my slides on. So this is a presentation. I'm going to spend about 25 minutes going through and then kind of pushing through from there. So this presentation, Leading Without Seeing, Remote and Virtual Working, the Implications for the Workforce. So what's really interesting is that I've been spending the last probably 18 months, 2 years, working with companies that are transitioning of going from typical premise-based businesses to then working online. Obviously, with what's happened with COVID, we're now in a stage that obviously this has affected everybody over the last 8-9 weeks. But actually what's more important and interesting now is how and what can you do within your organizations to move forward. Richard Branson, one day offices will be a thing of the past. So this was 2013. And there's been a trend to kind of move towards co-located and distributed businesses. And I'll explain a little bit more about how they work and operate. So this is some of the things that I'm going to cover: leadership, accountability, synchronicity, trust. Massive one, which I think has been tested over the last 8 weeks, as to how and what do you need to do as a leader to trust the people that you work with. Culture, isolation. So when we think about nurturing team connections, we really need to take a unique and different approach, because for a lot of us, before we went into COVID, we weren't really sure how and what we were doing to work and operate. Distributions of teams require, let's look at the future of teams, building the right team, rhythm, relationships, comms and tech, and then I'll conclude. Okay, so future of teams, back to the future, that aspect of what was and what is and what will be, how and what do we need to be thinking of as we move forward. Okay, so looking at different team structures. So you'll notice that actually you were pushed into this as moving forward as to having co-located. So having people in different locations. Some people, as we now come back into the workforce, some people will be doing that from a part-time perspective. Some people have got remote offices or co-located spaces within serviced offices, manifold, etc., down in New Plymouth. And then you can start then thinking about overlapping with different hours in different locations. So a distributed team is a team of people using technology to work the same from different places. So exactly what have you been doing? And I know that a number of you will have said to yourself, there's no way we will ever be working remotely or ever working from home. And actually some of the features and the benefits that you'll have experienced is now working out and understanding what's going to be best for you and your organization as you move forward. Some study that was done previously with regards to the 50-foot rule, people's levels of interactions and engagement about the concept of we need to physically see people to be able to have that touch point, to have that ability to be able to have the water cooler moments. Some of the advantage of being remote is that you can get different talent, you can be more productive, the cost savings. I know that speaking to a lot of people, they're now looking at things and understanding, do we need to still have the same level of office rent? How and what do we need to be able to do moving forward? You can think about this from a productive perspective. So what can you do as a leader and as a manager to ensure that the challenges that you have within your organization are streamlined and become more effective and more efficient? Okay, so how do we build the right teams, especially those that we need to work online? This is applicable both online, but also face-to-face as well. Okay. It's important that we get the right people, that they're talented, happy, helpful, curious, and most importantly for me is about accountability. So ensure that we get talented people. When you think about the recruitment perspective of working with people online, the normal interview process needs to be different. You've got to get to the stage of understanding and seeing people and understanding this part of their face, how they're working, how they're interacting, etc. Hire slow, fire quickly. One of the big things I've noticed as a leadership consultant is people hold on to people within their organizations far too long. If it's not working, find a way to resolve it. And if you can't resolve it, then fire and get somebody else in, get the right people. But you need to own and manage the culture within your organization. Personality matters more than talent. When you think about the ability to be able to upskill, learn, cross-reference, being able to move and push forward, is that you can get to the stage of learning stuff very, very quickly, but you can't replace talent. And you need to understand the personality as to how people work and operate. So be thinking about psychometric testings, Belbin, disc profiling, etc. Definitely worthwhile as you look to plan through with the people within your organization. A big phrase for me that I use with all of the organizations that I work with: clarity creates confidence. You need to ensure that people know, understand, and want to listen to what it is that you're saying and doing. And if they don't know or they have questions, it's your responsibility as the leader to ensure that you plug the gaps. So really, really clear. Clarity creates confidence. Important that you make sure that people are happy. So one of the things that a lot of people finding when they work remotely is that work-life balance, or the ability to be able to do the things that they want when they want, and being able to work as and when, and finding that balance that's going to work for them. Helpful. It's really important, because you haven't got the dynamics of the physicality, is to ensure that you create a culture where people are prepared to be helpful. I'll cover some of the technology that potentially you could look at, but it's important that you do that. You want people to be curious, about asking questions, about being inquisitive, about challenging the status quo. If we always do what we've always done, we'll always get what we've always got. So how do you create that culture as the leader within your organization to ensure that you've got people that are pushing the boundaries of understanding as to what we can be doing more to become more efficient, more productive, and make sure that we are pushing the business forward? Accountability is a massive piece. Transferring the trust. A book called Turn the Ship Around. The concept around this was about making sure that you transfer the trust. Give people the autonomy, the ownership to make their own levels of accountability, to be checking in on a regular basis. But they need to hold themselves account, because if they're holding themselves to account, then you could be working on higher level things. Delegate, elevate, really, really important. Some of you will have heard this quote before: culture eats strategy for breakfast. I know that we had on a previous webinar, we had Julie and the team from Baker Tilly. You really need to listen, understand, and own your culture as to what it is that you're trying to create, where you're at now, and make sure that from a remote perspective that you're all working on the same path. One of the things that I think for me is important is about the curse of knowledge. Just because we are here now and we know what it is that we're doing, how and what is it that we need to be doing moving forward? So the ability to be able to challenge, be challenged, and get external influences to be able to think how and what can we be doing differently to push the organization forward. The rhythm. It's really important that you get into the cadence of regular meetings. Okay, so some things like stand-up meetings on a Monday morning, check-in at 4 o'clock. I'm sure a lot of you will have been adapting and tweaking what was working and what wasn't working for you during the lockdown period. Important when you're looking at remote teams is that you've got commitment, that you've got the right people, and you give them the right tools so that they're able to work. Okay, and if it's not working, don't look at them. You need to look at yourself as the leader of the organization to think and understand how and what can we be doing differently. So are you managing the queue? This is a really interesting concept. So are you having people coming to you and saying, what do I need to do next? Why am I doing this? How am I doing this? When am I doing it? So when you give the level of accountability, people are coming to you having said that they've done things instead of asking things. Okay, so don't manage the queue. Make sure that you get to the stage. One of the phrases that I often use is nose in, fingers out. So you're literally kind of just pushing in and you're just having a look around, ensuring that things are working and operating without the concept of getting too involved. The moment you get too involved, what you're doing is you're showing your team, you're showing them that you don't trust them or you need to take control of the situation. You know, ensure and understand that you're never going to be able to do or get them to do everything that you do because they're not you. If they were you, they would be owning and running and managing their own organization and their business. So you have to appreciate that if you get about 80% the same of what you would expect from yourself, you're on the right path. But you also need to put into place the right tools, techniques, and training to ensure that you're rising the tide. Think about it from an internal perspective: coaching, mentoring, supporting, reviewing projects, etc. What are the things that you're doing as a leader to upskill your level within your team? You think about it, maybe part of your working week, a third should be doing, a third should be planning, and a third should probably be about upskilling the team within you. How much time are you spending this week looking at the people within your team and upskilling them? So the regular stand-up, this gets into the cadence of the meeting. Some people call this the scrum. A lot of people do this on a stand-up Monday morning meeting. What did you do last? What will you do next? What's in your way? Do you need her? This is about giving people the chance to voice the opportunity to share what they've been doing and ask and hear from their colleagues and their peers. Again, you can do this physicality within the workplace, or you can do it online. Very short, very snappy, but people understand where and what others are doing, and that gives them the confidence. It allows them to go and offer help and support and guidance as and when they can. I'm an EOS implementer, so Entrepreneurial Operating System. Great book called Traction. If you're a business owner, strongly recommend it. One of the things they talk about within there is everything has an owner. There can only be one. So when you're sat in meetings and you're delegating and you're elevating and you give people the chance to work on things, who owns something? Now, if somebody owns something, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're the one that has to deliver and do all of it. It just means that they're the ones that are accountable to ensuring that they're managing and they're leading other people, okay? So do you want to create a culture in an organization of managers or leaders? So think about the projects and the systems that you have within your organization. Who is the single person that owns that, okay? Really, really important. The other thing that EOS talks about is what they call a level 10 meeting. If you want to send me an email, I'll send you more details. The aspect of this is within line with the rhythm cadence. 90 minutes, the same time, every single week. And what we do is we go into a rhythm, which is short and sharp and snappy, as opposed to getting to the end of the month. So much changes within organizations on a weekly basis is that if I know that I take ownership for something, and I'm the one that leads it, when I come round to the following week, if I said that I will have done it, if I've not done it, then it drops down and it becomes an issue that we have to discuss as a team. So really, really worthwhile having a look at those tools. What gets measured gets done, okay? So when we think about it, we need to really be looking at, if we're not getting the results that we want, what's the measurement, tangible or intangible? And sometimes, you know, from a cultural perspective, this could be emotions as to how people are thinking and feeling. But more often than not, you can put a number towards something. If you're measuring it, that then becomes the focus, that then becomes the accountability. It's being tracked, it's being measured. Okay, relationships in the void. I'm sure as we went through this period, the understanding the relationship with working with people is to where are they, how are they, what's working, what's not working. When people were physically within the office, as a leader, you probably knew exactly what to do and when to do it, both informally and formally. And actually the consciousness about manifesting and creating the opportunity to have those conversations to enhance and build the relationship is a key aspect that a lot of people miss out on. So maybe just reflect from your perspective, what was it that you were doing that worked and that didn't work? And maybe think on that. Maybe get some feedback from your team. What did you love? What did you not like about working remotely? How and what is it that we can be doing as managers and leaders to be pushing through? Okay. Think about how you need to love your team. Okay. Checking in with them. You know, those aspects of kind of just going up to their desk and say, hey, so what did you do at the weekend? You know, what are you planning? What are you doing? What's working? What's not working? You sometimes need to just manifest that in a different way that, you know, online that you would have do face to face. And there's a skill that you kind of need to get to, which is being artfully intrusive. You have to get to the natural state of, you know, people are disconnected from a distance when they're working online. Okay. So consciously put those systems in place. One of the things that I do is I just put in a note on my diary, check in with such and such. Okay. So now I've consciously thought, whereas if I was in the office, I'd go up to them. I am now just making sure that I just pick up the phone and say, hey, how are you? A lot of people have been technologied out, zoomed out. Maybe sometimes it's just a case of picking up the phone and just going for a walk and both of you talking and walking at the same point. But think on how you need to just prod and poke differently online. Worthwhile looking, again, when you've got teams that are working remotely, and I'm a massive advocate of psychometric tests, whether it be DISC, whether it be Belbin, whether it be any of them, pick the one that's going to work best for your organization. And actually this just gives people permission and an understanding to know that people are different, but B, how to communicate differently with them. And this can be done not just necessarily just for your internal team, but also from the perspective of the other stakeholders. So when you know what characteristics your supply chain have got, it then means that you can give them more of what they actually need and what they want. And it goes from the subconscious into the conscious. How will you create your water cooler moments? Okay, think about the conversations, the culture that you have within your organization. How and what do you need to do to replicate those when you're online? Co-working space was on the upturn. We know within New Plymouth there's 2 or 3 different options here. This will now become much more prevalent moving forward. Companies sharing office space, receptionists, etc. The ability to be with people from other organizations so you can get that human interaction that has been missing when you solely work remotely on your own. One of the things that's fascinating and really, really important, and I've done this with a number of organizations, for those organizations that are working exclusively remotely or co-located, is bringing them together at least once a year. So when we're able to fly again or drive, get people all together so that you're able to then get that human connection. And a lot of organizations, I run their retreats for them. So I bring them together, anything from 2 days to 2 weeks, lots of activity, a lot of culture, a lot of relationship building and understanding how and what people do. Those memories serve incredibly well, not just for the coming year, but for years to come. The phrase that I often use is humanize to professionalize. So just because you're going to miss the aspect of that daily interaction, you can absolutely accelerate it by getting people together. Wait for me, I'm your leader. It's incredibly easy to become disconnected. As a leader, you might want to pause and see if anyone is following you. Ask your team, how can I be a better manager? How can I be a better leader? You know, I work on a couple of premises. What's working well, even better if. You need to get to the stage that you have a sixth sense of being able to work with people, and it's like surfing in the dark. So you really need to be attuned to understanding where and what people are doing. And if you haven't, make sure there's somebody within your organization that can do. Okay, so let's cover the communication and technology. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Irrespective as to the platform that you use, and the technology is there to support and assist, but it's vitally important that you are communicating, communicating, communicating. And actually, once you know how to communicate, is look at the process. What's the process that you're going to work within your organization as a whole, within differing teams, both utilizing the technology, but also the communication, the 2-way, the 3-way, etc. One of the problems for us when we use the tools is, we've got different people with different needs at different times. Okay. So some of the things here, tracking the work, the accountability. I was having a conversation this morning. The technology exists pretty much to do anything that you want. You've just got to find and understand what's the problem or the pain point, and what are we trying to achieve. And when you understand that, you can go out and find the right piece of technology that's going to work. Conference call, conference suites, group chat. I know from doing these webinars locally, Zoom webinars, Zoom meetings. A great one to have a look at is Circles. So circl.es. It's a bit more intuitive than Zoom, especially for kind of team meetings. But it's also that kind of the chat aspect of kind of WhatsApp or Slack. What's the communication methodology and rhythm and cadence that you need to have within your organization? Getting ideas across. So screen sharing, file sharing, different levels of code, recording of voice, video, annotation, loads of different tools that are out there. Try to get to the stage, especially if you look at the studies that have been done with regards to millennials, they actually want constant feedback and communication. So email actually really should be done potentially as the last resort. Think about that feedback loop, that communication loop within your organization. How are you going to check in? Again, as I said earlier, formally and informally. You as a leader really need to understand, okay, what is it that I'm going to do? How often? What am I going to be saying? How am I going to be recording it? Informally, formally. Okay, so as I go through a conclusion now, so people, it's all about the individual. I was on a webinar last night to the UK, and people were saying, oh yeah, we're getting to the stage of being really tired and bored with online communication. It's like, okay, if this was a meeting that you were having in your office, bring your A game, go into the meeting and show everybody this is going to be the best meeting ever. Again, whether that be face-to-face or be online, think about the people, think about the purpose. What's the pattern and the patterns that you need to put within your organization, and ensuring that you communicate. This is an old slide that I was saying up to 2 months ago, but I've kept it in because I think it's really key. This is not a fad. The way that you were working now as an organization has changed directly as a result of COVID. Okay. You need to think how and what can we do moving forward that's going to work for us. Be on scope, be on budget, and be on time. Okay. You've almost been given a blank sheet of paper with this current situation as to how you can shift your business dynamics and create the business that maybe you never thought that you could do or wanted to. Really spend some time reflecting and thinking, how can we be different, more efficient, and more effective? Find the right people. Okay. Look at the talent that you've got. Understand how you can develop that talent moving forward, and always be on the lookout for great people. And now as you move forward, you're not restricted by people within this geographical region. You can now be tapping into the resources globally. Create the right environment that you're going to set them up to win. Provide them the information, the support, the consistency that they'll need to succeed fabulously. Okay, because if you do that and spend a little bit of time, it's not a huge amount, but if you spend some time thinking on that, that will give you the best possible output and allow your organization to grow and flourish. Your role as the leader is about bringing people together. Okay. Don't just be satisfied with having a great team. Create the best team that you could ever do. And that's on you. It takes time and ownership, but you will get far better results if you focus and concentrate on building and bringing those people together. Use the tools, okay? And if you haven't found the tools, be on the constant lookout, because there are the tools, AI, automation, apps, technology. It's all there. It's just you need to be clear, what are we trying to achieve? And then find a way to find the right solution. And the biggest thing, are you ready? Because the world is now moving in a different direction. How and what is it that you are going to do to adapt, to change, and move forward? Sean.
Great. Thanks so much for that. I've got a couple of questions in here. So I'll start off. So this one related to your water cooler space. But the question that came through, the majority of my team has returned to our office. However, quite a few people are keen to work remotely a couple of days per week. How do I maintain the office culture with a mix and match team each week?
Okay. Great question. And it's a challenge or an opportunity, depending on which way you look at it. I think first thing I would do, depending on the existing culture within the organization, I would ask them. So I'd give them the responsibility and allow them to take ownership of it. Because if they take ownership, assign one person to own it, to get the feedback, to then present back to the owner or the board and offer the suggestion. I think from a practicality perspective, always maybe have one day where everybody's going to be in the office, so that if you're having that stand-up scrum meeting, it enables people to kind of work and have that level of connection. And maybe depending on roles and responsibilities, there may well be some people are in on some days, some people are working from home the other days. Flexibility is key, but owning and understanding what the purpose of what you're trying to achieve is also key.
Okay. Another one come through here. The relationships that the team have with each other will be the key to the strength of the team and the success of remote working. How do you enable them to build these individual relationships?
Okay, so a little bit on the kind of the rhythm and cadence. So again, depending on the culture of the organization, suggest or advise that they have regular check-ins with each other. One of the ways that I've seen this work is that you create almost like kind of a coaching circle. Okay, so you'll be checking in with me, Sean. I'll be checking in with Kaylin. Okay, those conversations are private, and actually it's just a way to build strong relationships and offer support. Now, you can give them some advice and some guidance on some of the questions to be asking, but there then becomes the conscious awareness of looking and wanting to build those relationships. Again, for me, I don't think it makes any difference whether it's online or whether it's face-to-face, is that actually if you look at the culture and you create the space and the permission and say, for us as an organization, it's actually a priority that we are saying, we want to make sure that an hour and a half each week you're checking in, not about work, might be cross-department, you're just checking in with somebody else. A couple of tools that are worthwhile looking at, Gallup 12. Okay, so the Gallup 12 is 12 questions that people ask people within their organizations. One of them is, have you got a best friend at work? Okay, so you can, there's also a piece of software called Engagement Multiplier. And if anybody wants any of these resources, just reach out to me. So you know, again, the tools and the resources are there. It's just understanding, are we going to own the culture within the organization? And I think for me, that's the biggest thing. Hopefully during this period that is alerted to people, remotely or not, how and what do we need to do to own the relationships?
Okay, great. Just for people to reaching out, can you please put your email address in the chat box for everyone?
I can.
And then, so another question that came through, and this is relating back to what you've just mentioned here, but do I need to increase daily communication with my team since I'm not spending time with them at work physically?
In short, yes. So I think a lot of business owners talk about walking the floor. Okay, so they park the car in the car park, they walk through the office or the factory or the workshop, depending on the nature, and they spend that first half an hour or they spend some time during the day just checking in, just sensing the energy as to what's working, what's not working, picking up on bits and pieces. You know, that's where, for me, that's where the good leaders stand out, because they know and understand what's the pulse of the organization at this moment in time. When you're doing that remotely, you need to be a little bit more scientific and you need to schedule a little bit more. Okay. So, for example, it might be the case of, I know that on a Thursday between the hours of 8 and 9 in the morning, I'm just going to randomly check in on people. Now, I just pick up the phone to somebody, or just jump on a Zoom call or whatever, they think that it's done impromptu, and it's like, hey Sean, how are you? Just wanted to check in. But actually I've scheduled it, and I know that that's what I'm doing. So you take the essence of how you would be leading within the physical environment, and you just migrate it through to, okay, what do I need to do to use the technology to allow me to have those impromptu moments?
This was a technology question that came through. What communication platform can you recommend for a team of 10? We have weekly catch-ups as a team. I'd like to use this forum to give text updates too.
Okay, so existing culture, I think, is key. I think if it's a team of 10, potentially WhatsApp, okay? Informal. And I think that there's a distinction between what's the formal communication and what's the informal communication, okay? So informal, WhatsApp is working really, really well. However, I work with multiple different companies. For one company, WhatsApp works really well. For another, it doesn't work well, okay? So depends on how people are connected via the device as well. So WhatsApp you can use both on your phone, but also you can download the app to use on your computer. But some people don't want to be looking and checking on their phones into the evenings. So understanding the culture, I think, is really, really key. Couple that I've seen that work really, really well. One is Slack, okay, and the other is Trello. So both of those fairly low entry into the, from a cost perspective. But it will help you continue the conversation and create the rhythm and the routine that's going to work. I would always say, with any piece of software, what is it that we're trying to achieve? So what's the purpose? What's the problem? Okay, so if we know what the problem is, how will we know, how will we feel when it's been resolved? And if we know that, actually we can then work backwards and then find the right solution.
Great. Nice. We've also been using Microsoft Teams here, which has been quite helpful over the last 6 weeks.
Absolutely. If you have Microsoft Office Suite or you're using 365, Teams is incredible, because it's the ability to interlink between the various different functions within the Office suite. And I mean, look, my background's technology. 15 years ago, you would have had to have been paying thousands, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, to get what now you can pick up for either free or a couple of cents a day or a week. The ability to leverage as a small organization, there's no divide like there used to be. You can be, agile and have access to all of the best software for, nothing, peanuts most of the time.
Great. Another question came through. As there's a certain cost to working at home, including personal internet and data, office equipment, etc., how do I manage expectations around this, as I already pay for these utilities in the office?
Okay, so great question. I would be speaking to internal HR, or getting some external HR advice. There will need to be an adaptation of contracts as to definitely from a health and safety perspective. I think again it comes down to, so what's the reason why people need or want to be working remotely, either from their perspective or from the perspective of you as the organization. And I think when you can understand that, do the features and the benefits outweigh the inhibitors? And if you think from an individual perspective, if I'm not having to travel to work both from a cost and a time perspective, and I've now got the flexibility, am I okay with actually paying for my internet, using the technology? Do you have a bring your own device policy, or are you providing the equipment? To be honest, if not necessarily so much from the internet perspective, but if you can provide your team with all of the technology that's going to make their life easier, so double screens, making sure that they've got the right chair, making sure that they've got the right hardware, etc., the productivity that you should get as a result should be higher, and it should be well worth the investment, as long as you're setting the expectations. Okay, it goes back to one of the things I said before is, and this is a mentality, transferring the trust, challenging our own inner beliefs that if I'm sat at home, I'm watching Netflix at the same point of doing my emails. So get to the stage of being an outcome-based organization rather than task. That then gives you the opportunity and the ability to know how and what people are doing.
Right. And from your experience of working with lots of organizations around the world and remote working, what kind of expectations do employers have for their employees? Do they set them up? Is there a lot of remote offices out there that are set up with the correct chairs and work desks and all that kind of technology?
Yeah, I think, your responsibility as an employer is to create the right environment physically and culturally to ensure that you get the best out of the people that you're paying. At the end of the day, you want to get the best possible return for the money that you're paying. It's it's like any other service. So if you as the owner create the right environment, create the physical, the infrastructure, and then the ability and the environment to be checking in, the accountability piece, etc. Create the environment and then just allow people to flourish. Now, again, I think there's some changing of mindsets as to this is how we did it. Just rip it all up and start again. Use this as a great opportunity to find how and what you can be doing moving forward. Because actually, the premise was always around, well, people work within 9 to 5. And actually, does it really matter when somebody gets something done? Somebody wants to go for a walk at 10 o'clock in the morning and they're going to be doing some of their work into the evening because that actually suits them better because they want to go for a surf. If you're giving people that opportunity to live a better life, they will pay you back in bucket loads as long as you create the structure and the environment and the accountability. I don't necessarily think it's about having rules. Actually, it's about being clear in a framework as to what it is that you expect.
Fantastic. And just one more question on here, and it was to the point of being curious. So how do you encourage curiosity when the team are working in silos remotely?
Again, formally and informally. So as a qualified coach, I think there's aspect of questions that you can be posing the team. You can not enforce, but encourage people to get together. So one of the things that I've been constantly doing and recommending with all of the organizations I've worked with over the years is, okay, let's have a strategic time. Let's spend some time thinking and working on eventualities. Okay, so I'd walk into a board meeting and I'd have a set of envelopes and I'd go, Sean, pick an envelope. And the envelope would say, you've just been knocked over by a bus. Please turn your chair around. Okay, right. So now the rest of the team have to work and think, okay, so who's going to take up Sean's work? Who's got access to his email? Who's got access to his calendar? So how and what are we going to be able to do to adapt and change in the moment? Because situations happen all the time, but we need to ensure that we're agile in our thinking and we're able to adapt accordingly. So it's important to create the space and the throughput that allows us to be thinking and working differently. So let's go into, either a physical room or a virtual room, and let's have a blank whiteboard and say, okay, let's just pose the question. If money was no object, what would we do? Well, we'd do this, we'd do this. Okay, cool. So keep the brain moving. We start thinking about possibilities, eventualities, restrictions, what's holding us back, but you need to be spending time on that. And again, that comes back into how and what do we need to do to plan as an organization to be, if you think about the old quadrant box, working on the things that are important, but not urgent. And those strategic thinking, those planning, those review conversations of customers, suppliers, processes, etc. In my experience, Most companies don't spend anywhere near the amount of time they should do on the unknown unknowns.
Right. Great. Well, thank you very much, Adam, for that. And thanks everyone for joining us. This will be recorded, so we'll send out the recording to your email this afternoon or tomorrow morning. And it's just a nice reminder that the next webinar will be on Tuesday, the 9th of June at 11:30. So that's in a week's time. We're going to have Ian Cooper join us, who's the Head of Commercial Business and Agri at TSB Bank. So he's going to give valuable advice on how banks can support you through COVID-19. So thanks again, Adam. And then until next time, have a nice day.